"This is Mabel Greer," Elena announced into the microphone, her voice echoing through the grand ballroom. "And if you haven't heard of her yet, trust me, you will." The spotlight found me, blinding and merciless. Hundreds of faces turned in my direction, curious, surprised, shocked. But only two expressions truly mattered to me, my father's and brother's. Frank Greer, Chicago's real estate mogul, sat frozen at his table, champagne glass suspended midway to his lips. Marcus, his golden boy, looked as though someone had punched him in the stomach. I felt the weight of the crystal award in my hands, cool and substantial, like the truth finally breaking free after years of suffocation. My heart hammered against my ribs, the sound of applause washing over me in waves that seemed to come from somewhere far away. This moment, this perfect, terrifying, liberating moment, was never part of my plan. For years, I had carefully constructed my invisible empire, piece by piece, deal by deal, all while my family continued to look right through me. But now, standing in the harsh glare of recognition, I realized that perhaps this collision of my two worlds had been inevitable all along. Flashback, the invisible daughter. "You've always been so unambitious, Mabel," my father had said just months earlier, his voice slicing through the chatter at our family dinner. "Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues, and that's fine, but leave the real work to people like your brother." I had carefully set down my fork, my hands trembling beneath the table where no one could see. A familiar knot formed in my throat, the same constriction I'd felt countless times throughout my life whenever he spoke to me this way. And yet, somehow, except for you, Dad, my unambitious self is the only other person at this table with a track record of success, I'd replied, my voice steadier than I felt inside. My mother had died when I was 12, leaving me motherless just when I needed her most. Dad had retreated into his work after her death, leaving me to essentially raise myself while he poured all his attention into Marcus and later, Samantha. I often wondered if I reminded him too much of Mom. We shared the same analytical mind, the same quiet determination. Perhaps that's why he could barely look at me. Marcus smirked at me across the table, that infuriating dismissive grin I'd seen my entire life. Even as children, he'd been the favorite, the loudest voice, the most charming smile, the one who could do no wrong even when he'd broken my science fair project the night before judging. I remember staring at my plate, a sudden clarity washing over me. Why did I keep coming back for more? Why did I still crave their approval when it was abundantly clear I would never receive it? Something shifted inside me that evening, though they couldn't see it. The endless cycle of seeking validation from people determined not to give it was finally breaking. Flashback. The breaking point. The real turning point had come 3 years earlier, though my family never noticed it. I'd been sitting in one of the company's weekly strategy meetings, my carefully prepared proposal clutched in my hands. For weeks, I'd researched a struggling property in the West Loop, an abandoned warehouse that everyone had written off. I'd run the numbers, developed architectural mock-ups, and even secured preliminary interest from a boutique hotel chain. My heart had raced as I waited for my turn to speak. This was it, the moment they'd finally see me, really see me. "Next item," Dad announced, glancing at the agenda. "Mabel has a proposal regarding the Wilson Street property." I stood, distributing my materials with hands that wouldn't quite stay steady. "Thank you. As you all know, the Wilson Street warehouse has been a drain on resources for the past 2 years. I've developed a comprehensive plan to—" "That location's a lost cause," Marcus interrupted, not even bothering to look at my proposal. "We've already sunk too much into it. Let's move on." "I've actually found a way to—" I started again, determined to be heard. Dad cut me off with a wave of his hand. "If Marcus says it's not worth it, then it's not worth it." Next item. Just like that, dismissed in 10 seconds. My proposal, which had taken weeks of my life, was brushed aside without consideration. I sat there, my face burning, as conversation moved around me as though I were invisible. I still remember the weight of the proposal in my hands, the way my vision blurred slightly as I tried to maintain composure. The memory of my mother's voice surfaced unexpectedly. "Sometimes, sweetheart, you have to create your own spotlight when others won't shine it on you." That night, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. If they didn't want to listen to me in their company, I would build my own. Flashback. The secret beginning. I knew better than to quit outright. Instead, I began my rebellion silently, methodically, traits my father had always mistaken for weakness. I started with a rundown duplex on the outskirts of town, all I could afford with my savings. It was the kind of property Greer Enterprises would never touch, too small, too much work, too little prestige. The first time I stood inside that empty, dilapidated space, doubt crept in. Who was I kidding? I had no experience outside the family business. What if they were right about me? What if I truly wasn't cut out for this? But then I noticed how the afternoon light streamed through the western windows, how the bones of the structure were solid despite the cosmetic damage. I saw what it could become, not what it was. In that moment, standing alone in that dusty space, I felt something my father had never given me: freedom to trust my own instincts. Every weekend for 6 months, I painted walls, replaced fixtures, learned plumbing basics from YouTube videos, and negotiated with contractors. When I sold that duplex a year later, the profit was modest, but the victory was immense. It was mine alone. Flashback. Finding Elena. You have good instincts, a woman told me at the closing of my third property. Elena Moreno, a Cuban-American real estate investor with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. The way you repurposed that awkward space was brilliant. We met for coffee the following week. Elena had her own story of being underestimated, as a woman, as an immigrant's daughter, as someone who didn't fit the mold of what a real estate mogul should look like. My father came to Miami with nothing, she told me, stirring her coffee. He cleaned office buildings at night while studying English during the day. People assumed he was unintelligent because his accent was thick. He taught me that what others think of you is irrelevant. It's what you know about yourself that matters. By the end of that meeting, a partnership was born. Elena would be the public face, charismatic, connected, commanding attention. I would be the strategist, analyzing markets, spotting opportunities, designing our growth. We called our company Horizon Properties, a name my family would never connect to me. At Horizon Properties, over the next 2 years, while maintaining the appearance of the dutiful if unambitious daughter at Greer Enterprises, I built an entirely separate life. Elena and I targeted properties my father and brother had explicitly rejected: a retail strip near the university that needed rezoning, a small office building with outdated systems but in an up-and-coming neighborhood, residential complexes on the edges of gentrifying areas. Our breakthrough came with the Wilson Street warehouse, the very property my father and brother had dismissed. I disguised my involvement through layers of LCs, with Elena handling all public negotiations. We secured it for 20% less than what Greer Enterprises had originally paid, a fact that gave me particular satisfaction. Where my father had envisioned another luxury condo development, the safe, predictable option, I saw something different. We transformed the warehouse into a combination of affordable artist studios, a food hall featuring local entrepreneurs, co-working spaces, and a rooftop urban farm that supplied the restaurants below. The project received glowing coverage in the Chicago Tribune and was featured in a national architecture magazine. My father had the article framed, not because he appreciated the innovation, but because the development was driving up property values in an area where Greer Enterprises owned adjacent lots. Smart woman, that Elena Moreno, he commented at a family dinner. Shame she's working with such a small operation. She could do real damage with proper resources. I nearly choked on my wine. The pattern was always the same: find what others overlooked, envision its potential, execute precisely, and sell at the perfect moment or maintain for steady income. With each success, my confidence grew, as did our company's reputation and resources. One evening, reviewing our portfolio in our office, Elena placed a cup of coffee on my desk. "You've been staring at those numbers for hours," she said. "Even machines need to recharge, Mabel." I smiled, taking a grateful sip. "I can't help it. The Lakefront Commons acquisition is going to put us in a whole new league. It's exactly the kind of property my father and Marcus would laugh off as too complex and too risky." Elena settled into the chair across from me. "Speaking of them, don't you think it's only a matter of time before they figure out who's behind Horizon Properties? We're making waves, Mabel. People are noticing." "Maybe," I admitted, swirling my coffee. "But by the time they do, it won't matter. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. What I didn't say was that part of me wanted them to know. Wanted my father to realize what he'd missed. Wanted Marcus to understand that his sister, the one he'd mocked his entire life, had quietly built something extraordinary right under his nose. Elena studied my face with the perceptiveness that made her such a formidable negotiator. You're not doing this for their approval anymore, Mabel. You're doing it for you. She was right. Somewhere along the way, proving myself to my family had transformed into proving myself to myself. Their validation, which I'd craved for so long, had become secondary to my own sense of accomplishment. Family gatherings, at every family dinner after that, I observed my father and brother with new eyes. Their mockery, once so painful, now seemed almost amusing, like watching children play at being kings, unaware that their kingdom was slowly being rezoned under their feet. Mabel, when's the last time you even stepped foot in the office? Dad would ask, his tone dripping with disdain. You know, for someone with shares in the company, you sure do a great job of making yourself invisible. If only he knew that my invisibility was my greatest asset. While they assumed I was failing, I was building an empire that would soon rival theirs. While they dismissed me, I was studying their mistakes and avoiding them in my own business. That particular evening, I had closed a deal on a riverfront property hours earlier, an acquisition that Greer Enterprises had been eyeing but moving too slowly to secure. The satisfaction of that knowledge warmed me more than the expensive wine in my glass. Marcus would inevitably chime in. Not that anyone notices, of course. It's not like the company's missing out on your valuable contributions. I studied my brother as he spoke, the slight sheen of sweat on his forehead, the barely concealed anxiety in his eyes. Rumors had been circulating about his latest development having serious structural issues that had been covered up during inspections. How's the Lakeshore Tower project coming along? I asked innocently, watching his expression flicker. I heard there were some concerns about the foundation work. His smile faltered momentarily. Nothing we can't handle. Dad and I have it under control. Dad glanced sharply at Marcus, clearly unaware of whatever problems were brewing. Another dynamic I'd observed countless times. Marcus hiding issues until they became too big to conceal. My father cleaning up his messes while convincing himself that his son was learning valuable lessons. My younger sister, Samantha, remained oblivious to it all, more interested in her Instagram followers than family dynamics. Did you see my new sponsored post? She'd ask, showing her phone across the table. 40,000 likes already. I envied her sometimes. She'd never had to fight for her father's attention the way Marcus and I had. She'd been born after he'd already chosen his heir apparent. Her obliviousness was its own kind of freedom. The Industry Gala, the annual Chicago Real Estate Excellence Awards, was the kind of event my father and brother lived for, a chance to be seen, recognized, celebrated. I'd always avoided these gatherings, uncomfortable with the artificial networking and posturing. But this year, Elena insisted. Come on, she said, tossing an elegant black dress onto my couch. You've earned a night to celebrate. Besides, she added with a mischievous smile, Horizon Properties is nominated for Innovative Firm of the Year. I stared at her. We're what? Nominated. For the biggest award of the night. Her smile widened. The same award your father's company has won for the past 3 years running. The night of the gala, I dressed with unusual care. The black dress Elena had selected was understated but elegant, architectural in its simplicity, with clean lines that emphasized strength rather than flash. I paired it with my mother's diamond bracelet and simple pearl earrings. My reflection showed someone I was still getting to know, a woman who stood straight, who met her own gaze directly, who no longer tried to disappear. The ballroom was a monument to opulence, crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, Chicago's elite in designer attire. I spotted my father and Marcus immediately, holding court at a prime table near the stage. Well, well, Marcus said when he noticed me approaching. Look who decided to show up. You know, Mabel, these events are usually for people who actually contribute to the industry. Dad barely glanced at me as he adjusted his tie. Just try not to embarrass us. I swallowed the retort rising in my throat and found Ina at our table near the back. How's it going over there? She asked, nodding toward my family. Exactly as expected, I replied. taking a calming sip of champagne. Let's just get through tonight. As the evening progressed, award after award was announced: Best Residential Development, Commercial Innovation, Community Impact. Greer Enterprises, usually a multiple award winner, hadn't taken home a single one. I could see my father's expression darkening with every passing announcement, Marcus's confidence visibly deflating. Then came the final and most prestigious award of the night. And the award for Innovative Firm of the Year, the host announced, goes to the company that has shown unparalleled vision and excellence in the real estate sector. This year's winner is Horizon Properties. The room erupted in applause as Elena rose from her seat, radiant with confidence as she made her way to the stage. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. This wasn't part of the plan. We'd agreed years ago that I would remain in the shadows. My father and Marcus exchanged confused glances, clearly wondering how a smaller firm like Horizon Properties had managed to overshadow them. Dad's knuckles whitened around his empty glass, his jaw clenched in the way I recognized from childhood, the look that had always preceded someone's punishment. Elena accepted the award with grace, thanking the industry and acknowledging our team. But then she paused, and I knew something was coming that I hadn't anticipated. But this moment isn't just about me, she continued, her voice taking on a deeper resonance. It's about someone who has worked tirelessly behind the scenes, someone whose brilliance and determination have been the driving force behind Horizon Properties. My hands began to tremble, just as they had at those family dinners, but for entirely different reasons. Many of you may not know her name, but that's because she prefers it that way, Elena continued. The brain behind every deal we've closed, every risk we've taken, and every success we've earned is my partner and closest confidant, Mabel Greer. Present the revelation aftermath, and now here I was, standing on stage, the spotlight revealing what had been hidden for so long. The room's stunned silence gave way to murmurs, then genuine applause. I caught sight of a real estate reporter frantically typing on his phone, no doubt Googling who exactly Mabel Greer was and discovering my connection to the Greer real estate dynasty. The faces in the audience blurred together, but I could pick out my father and brother with perfect clarity. Dad sat rigid, his expressions cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been fury or respect. With him, these emotions often looked remarkably similar. Marcus's mouth hung slightly open, the cockiness drained from his face. Elena squeezed my shoulder. Say something, she whispered. I stepped to the microphone, years of practiced invisibility warring with this moment of unavoidable visibility. Thank you, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. This is unexpected. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. When Elena and I started Horizon Properties, we took chances on properties others dismissed, on ideas others ignored, and on ourselves. Tonight proves those risks were worth taking. I paused, gathering my thoughts. Real estate isn't just about buildings. It's about creating spaces where communities can thrive, where people can afford to live near their workplaces, where small businesses can grow. It's about seeing potential where others see only problems. My eyes found my father and brother. To everyone who believed in us, thank you. And to those who didn't, I allowed myself a small smile. Thank you for underestimating us. It gave us the fuel to succeed. The applause that followed felt like absolution. Years of dismissal, of being overlooked and underestimated, were washed away in that wave of recognition. On the terrace. After the ceremony, my father found me on the terrace. The Chicago skyline glittered behind him, the same view visible from his office where he dismissed my ideas so many times. He stood silently beside me, his hands gripping the railing. Up close, I could see what I had missed from across the ballroom. New lines around his eyes, a certain weariness that his carefully maintained appearance couldn't quite conceal. For the first time, I saw him not as the towering figure of my childhood, but simply as a man, successful by his own measures, but flawed in ways he would never acknowledge. I didn't know, he finally said, his voice stripped of its usual authority. I had no idea you were capable of all this. The night air was cool against my flushed skin. I took my time before responding. All my life, I had rushed to fill silences around my father, desperate to say the right thing to earn his approval. That night, I let the silence stretch between us, comfortable in the knowledge that I no longer needed his validation. That's because you never cared to find out, I replied, my tone even but firm. You and Marcus were so busy dismissing me that you never bothered to see what I was doing. He stared out at the city, his city, as he'd always thought of it. I thought I was protecting you, he admitted after a long silence. From what? The question escaped before I could temper it. From failing, he said simply. This business is brutal, Mabel. I didn't think you had the what? I pressed. The guts? The brains? The drive? What exactly did you think I lacked? His silence spoke volumes. I thought of my mother then, how disappointed she would have been to see the way he treated me. She had always believed I could do anything, a faith he had never shared. Your mother was always the one who saw things in people that weren't obvious, he said, as if reading my thoughts. She would have been proud of you. She always said you had a way of seeing possibilities where others didn't. The unexpected acknowledgement of my mother, of her faith in me, pierced through the armor I had built against him. I was wrong, he finally said, the words clearly unfamiliar in his mouth. I see that now. In my office, 3 days later, my father requested a meeting at my office, my territory, not his. The Horizon Properties headquarters occupied the top floor of a renovated printing factory in the West Loop, open concept with exposed brick walls, abundant natural light, and a rooftop garden. It could not have been more different from the chrome and glass sterility of the Greer Enterprises tower. He arrived precisely on time, wearing his custom suit-like armor. Elena was already waiting in the conference room, a silent but potent ally. Mabel, Elena, he began, sliding a folder across the table. I've spoken with the board. We're prepared to make an offer to acquire Horizon Properties. Of course. He couldn't simply acknowledge my success. He had to try to absorb it, make it part of his domain, bring me back under his control. Elena raised an eyebrow, her expression cool. That's a generous offer, Mr. Greer, but I think Mabel should have the first word on this. My father looked at me expectantly, his confidence barely masking the uncertainty beneath it. I didn't even need to open the folder. No, I said simply. His brows furrowed. Mabel, at least consider. No, I repeated, my voice calm but firm. I've worked too hard to build something that's mine. I'm not giving that up to return to a company where I spent years being overlooked and dismissed. I'm free now, Dad. And I'm staying that way. The silence that followed felt like a shifting of tectonic plates, realignment of a relationship that had been imbalanced my entire life. I underestimated you, he said finally, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I won't make that mistake again. As he left, Elena gave me a subtle nod of approval. No words were necessary between us. Our partnership had evolved to the point where we could communicate volumes in a glance. I walked to the window of my office, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Below me was a city full of overlooked properties waiting to be transformed, just as I had transformed myself from the invisible daughter to a force that couldn't be ignored. The journey hadn't been about revenge or even recognition, though both held their satisfaction. It had been about becoming the person I was always meant to be, despite everyone who told me I couldn't. Through the glass, I could see my reflection, a woman standing straight and tall, no longer trying to disappear. Behind me, on my desk, sat a photo of my mother that I had recently placed there after years of keeping her memory private. Her smile seemed especially bright today, as if she had been waiting all along for me to discover my own strength. My mother would have been proud. And finally, so was I,